up with her and put the entire blame on her. I was a legend around school. I was getting texts and calls from people I didn't even know existed, and getting invites to all the coolest parties. Sophia had always said she hated those parties, so we never went, but now I could go. This was awesome. I sneaked out late at night to a party that weekend. People greeted me like I was a celebrity. I was getting high fives and smiles from everyone. Then I saw Sophia, a few feet away, dancing and laughing with a bunch of people around her. I was so shocked. I thought she hated these noisy parties. It really didn't look like her first one. What is going on with her? The next day, I noticed Sophia had blocked my number. I was devastated that my best friend had turned so cold-hearted. Eventually, I figured I could use the attention I was getting to forget about Sophia. Everyone seemed to think that I was a rebel, so I became one. I started hanging out with the other rebels, and I even started dating Mark. Mark had a motorbike and barely even went to school. I figured Sophia might even be jealous. Besides, if Sophia ever spilled my secret, dating him was a good way to cover things up. I spent the next few weeks doing extremely stupid stuff with my new friends. I was ditching school all the time and staying out late. We would go around the neighborhood on bikes and throw eggs at people's cars and houses. On one of our eggscapades, Mark was driving really fast and his bike slipped, and we both landed hard on the street. I had scrapes all over my arms and knees. After that, my parents pulled me aside and asked me what was going on with me. They told me that they barely recognized me with my crazy new hair, and it wasn't like me to behave this way. People had been telling them so many bad things about me. "You have no idea what I'm going through," I yelled. "Just leave me alone." And they did. I felt miserable. I sneaked out after Mom and Dad had gone to bed to Mark's place. We were just hanging out when Mark suddenly tried to kiss me. I pushed him off. He looked surprised and asked me if I was gay or something. How did he know? He simply shook his head and said, "Lucky guess." I ended up telling him everything. I said that I was sorry I'd been pretending to be into him, but I made him swear he wouldn't tell anyone. He was actually pretty sweet about it. He said it was okay and my secret was safe with him. But the next day, when I went to school, the most horrible thing happened. I was called into the principal's office again. What now? I went to the office. I saw Miss Talbert standing there looking furious. Wait, why was she back here? The minute she saw me, she jumped down my throat. Apparently someone had trashed her house. "You had the guts to go into my house and leave a threatening note?" she screamed at me. "Who do you think you are, you idiot?" All my protests that it wasn't me fell on deaf ears. I got suspended again. The minute I got home, I called Mark and told him what had happened. He said she was just out to get me and was probably making all this stuff up. I felt so angry at being set up by her. Mark told me to meet him later at a party that night, and we'd discuss how to get back at Miss T. I found Mark at the party, and he told me we should go talk in private. He took me to a dark, empty hall where I could barely see anything. Then, to my surprise, he took my hand and said, "I'm so confused about my feelings for you, Ames." Suddenly, he pulled me towards him and leaned in for a kiss. I nearly fainted. I pushed him off and jumped to my feet. "You know I love Sophia," I yelled at him angrily. "I will never love anyone else." I heard people laughing and the lights came on. I almost died of shock. Everyone I knew from school was there, even Sophia. I couldn't understand what was happening. Mark said, "You shouldn't have wasted my time all these weeks if you're into girls." Then he said he was really mad at me because I'd just pretended to like him, and it was him who trashed Talbert's house. Everyone was looking at me and whispering stuff. She told Sophia she loved her, and Sophia stopped talking to her because she's totally weirded out. That's why they don't hang out anymore. I ran out of there with tears in my eyes. I couldn't believe Mark would stoop to this. The next morning, things got even worse. Someone had made a video of what happened last night and had uploaded it to TikTok. I was ruined. There was no way I could show my face at school. When my suspension was over, I had to go back. No one would let me live this down. Everywhere I went, people made fun of me. I wanted to disappear. I also realized how terrible it felt to have your privacy violated. Maybe this was all karma for making that stupid video. Just when I thought my life couldn't get any worse, it did. I got a call from my dad saying Mom had been in a terrible accident. I rushed to the hospital. While she was asleep, I cried and felt so terrible for what a horrible person I'd become. Dad and I were called into the police station and shown the CCTV footage of the accident. It had been a hit and run, and they were trying to get a hold of the driver. I could hardly believe my eyes as they zoomed in. Wasn't Miss T's car the same model? And it was definitely a woman in the driving seat, and those pink clothes looked all too familiar. Was she that crazy that she'd try to hurt my mom just to get back at me? This was insane. I had to make sure I was right before I reported her to the police. I went to her house, but I couldn't see anyone around. Luckily, the garage gate was slightly open. I slid under it and turned my flashlight on. I had to get a good look at her car. If it was banged up and had the same number plate, I had my culprit. Boy, was I going to make her pay for hurting my mom. The car was dented in the front. I had her now. But then I checked the number plate. The car was the exact same brand and model, but the number was completely different. I sat on the floor with my back to the car, holding my head in my hands. Was I just losing my mind? Suddenly, the light went on, and there was Miss T standing in the door that led into the house. She looked really surprised to see me. Weirdly, though, she didn't seem angry at all. I started crying, and she told me to come inside. I told her everything that had happened the past few weeks. She listened to me quietly, and once I was done, she said something that completely shook me. I know it's not you, Amy. It took me a while to figure out who the real culprit was, and why they would want to hurt me. She took out her phone and showed me a few pictures of a young girl who looked a bit familiar. In one, she was standing with a doll's head in one hand and the rest of it in the other, and she was laughing hard. In another, she seemed to be trying to choke a frog. Miss T said that she had dated the girl's father for a while, and she noticed that the child's behavior was rather violent and disturbing. She told the girl's father when she nearly killed her pet hamster. After that, the girl seemed to be after her with a vengeance. She made her life miserable and was always playing pranks on her or telling lies about Miss T to her dad, who seemed to believe them. She could be very manipulative and sweet when she wanted to be. Eventually, Miss T had enough, and she broke up with him and moved out soon after. The child's name was Sophie. It was only recently that Miss T figured out Sophia was the same kid. I couldn't believe it. Sophia had broken my heart, but the girl I loved wasn't a psycho. There was only one person who could clear this up. I looked for her everywhere the next day at school, but what I saw left me thunderstruck. I found Sophia and Mark making out under the bleachers. When they pulled away, Sophia asked Mark, "Does the idiot suspect anything?" I just knew she was talking about me. All my rage and love and hurt bubbled over, and I did exactly what she had done. I took out my camera. They talked about how they had both played me, and Sophia got her revenge not only on Miss T, but also lame, stupid Amy. I was furious, but to my delight, they discussed literally everything they had done to set me and Miss T up. I gasped. Apparently, Mr. Faulkner was only playing with Miss T. Sophia had bribed him to break her heart. And me? Sophia wanted to play me simply because she could. She was a psycho, all right. Now that I had her confession, the rest was easy. Mark was suspended for a month. Sophia's father was called in, and she had to leave the school for good. She didn't go quietly. There was a lot of kicking and screaming. I decided to get my act together and focus on my studies. Enough drama for me. Oh, and Miss T is my new math tutor. We may even be friends now, too.